Hi, good evening. My name's Jason Debly, and tonight we're going to talk about how to drink whiskey. In particular, we're going to focus on Scotch, but my comments about drinking Scotch would apply to rum and Canadian and American whiskeys and, well, world whiskeys, whether they're from Japan or New Zealand or even Australia and South Africa and England. There's whiskey all over the place. And one of my viewers, Sean, asked me, he said, "Look, Jason, I'm a noob and I would like some suggestions on how to drink whiskey." And I think that is, he's about 25 years old, I think he said in his comment. And I've gotten that type of email in the past or comment on the channel from other people. And people who are new to whiskey, most of the people who watch this channel are between 25 and 40 years of age. I think they're mostly men, like 98%. Hopefully that female demographic will grow over time. I'm sure it will. But these people who are discovering whiskey, they're kind of reticent or nervous or think there's certain things you need to know. You need to know a couple of things, but you certainly don't need to pay money to somebody to teach you. I notice on Facebook there are these master classes for how to drink wine and appreciate wine. I think James Suckling, a famous wine critic and aficionado, has a course. And I guess, hey, it's a free market, it's capitalism, you're allowed to charge for your knowledge. I think for whiskey, though, we don't need to charge. It needs to be demystified. If I can do one thing, is explain to you that appreciation for whiskey is like appreciation of a good meal. So we're going to start with the very, very basics. And the basic place to start is glassware. You got a choice. A tumbler or a Glencairn glass or a similar type whiskey glass where the opening close is kind of like convex, and the purpose of that is to trap the spirit. So we're going to try a little bit of my trusty Craigenmore, one of my favorite single malts. Kind of a go-to brand when I just feel like, I don't know, just need it. It's just my favorite. So the glassware, like I said, it closes a little bit because it traps the scent. That's the function. So there you get a nosing of what your whiskey's going to give, what aromas it gives off. Whereas if you pour it into a tumbler, nosing is much more difficult. You know, you're tipping, you put your nose in quite deeply, you'll get some scent, but you really don't get the aromatic experience. And nosing whiskey, some people put a lot of effort into it, some people don't put very much. The importance of nosing whiskey is this. If the aromas are nice, if they're pleasant, if that is foreshadowing of how great the spirit might be on the palate. Rare do I find a whiskey that is amazing on the nose and is a disappointment on the palate. Common is whiskey that is slightly offensive, boring, mundane, or meh on the nose, and guess what? The palate and the finish are no different. So the one way to nose whiskey is, you bring it in, your mouth is closed, and you take a little sniff and see what you pick up. So I'm with Craigenmore here. What do I pick up? It's definitely floral. There's kind of an exotic, like heather, which grows in Scotland, this low-growing shrub. Apricots. Oranges. So that's how you nose it. And how do I know to choose that terminology? Well, it's just based on my experience. If I live in a different part of the world with a different cuisine, then my choice of vocabulary for aromas and scents will be different, and that's okay. So there's no right or wrong to nosing whiskey, right? Okay, so the next step after you've chosen your glassware, you've poured yourself a dram, you're going to have a taste. Now obviously, whiskey is not beer. All whiskey starts as beer in the still, at one point, but it goes through the still, and great production, and you get this very refined spirit. But my point is, it's not beer, it's not wine, it's not cider. Therefore, you don't just gulp it down. Obviously, if you shoot it like you're in college at the bar at midnight, it's going to probably bounce back up with a lot of the contents of your stomach, or it's going to sear on the way down, and you're going to think, ew, that Jameson or that Bushmills or whatever you're shooting is disgusting. Well, you know, any whiskey is pretty much disgusting when you take a big gulp and try to shoot it down. So, first rule is, imagine taking a sip the size of a dime or a quarter. That's it. You take that little tiny size on your palate, on your tongue, you hold it for a few seconds, and just appreciate what you pick out. So, we'll do it with this. So, with this Craiganmore, it was a little bit of spice, oranges, a little bit of lemon, some barley, some wheat, some heather and peat, very faint. Let's do that again. Candle wax, kosher salt, walnuts, English cream, I like. So those descriptors are based on my food experience, the cuisine that I eat. I live in Canada, I live in North America, I'm familiar with cuisine from around the world, but I'm most familiar with the words I use to describe this whiskey. If I live in Southeast Asia or in Japan, describing certain phenolic notes, like in an Islay whiskey, which is peated and smoky and lots of brine notes, I might use the word wasabi, which is, you know, a complement to sushi, which is immediately, you know, horseradish, spicy, a little hot. So the words you choose are your words, and they're not right. Well, they're not wrong is what I mean. They are right if they're right for you. Now, when you talk with your friends might go, you know, I really pick up this flavor. And I might think, yeah, bang on. That's exactly what it tastes like. Whiskey reviewers and critics will go farther. They do what is, in law they call it a legal fiction. In the whiskey world, it's kind of a whiskey fiction. We might take a sip and say, I'm getting plywood, I'm getting sawdust. Now, the whiskey reviewer doesn't eat sawdust. He doesn't lick a piece of plywood or oak, you know. He might say, this is, or she might say, this is very oaky, you know, without actually biting into a plank of oak, but oak gives off certain flavors that we're familiar with. But they might go further. I find, like with bourbon, American whiskey, or Tennessee whiskey, I will taste notes of stone, like riverstone, limestone, which is related to the source of water for that whiskey. But I imagine in my mind what limestone tastes like, or spring water. I know what spring water tastes like. And I find saying spring water, limestone, that works when I'm describing Tennessee whiskey or bourbon. And people go, yeah, I get that. Because there's lots of brooks, and there's lots of little rivers and worn stones, you know. Or if I say, you know, it tastes of damp leaves, describing more Scotch than bourbon. I don't actually eat the leaves, obviously, but the idea of damp leaves, that flavor profile conveys something to the reader. And that's what whiskey critics do. So you don't take it literally, just like you may not in your religious scripture interpretation take it literally. It might be more by analogy. Well, with our whiskey evangelism, we do a bit of analogy too. Okay. The final part of tasting is the finish. So when they say finish, it's really the flavor that remains after you swallow your whiskey. So with Craigenmore, I'm left with this great kind of flinty, dusty rose, orange rind, tangerine, blood orange notes, and a little bit of smoke. Oh, so good. I just love this stuff. And black pepper. I'm getting some black pepper coming through. And some fresh ground. Yeah, black pepper. Maybe some kitchen spices. That's another thing I wanted to mention to you. And I didn't do it tonight. I'm not good with a camera. But I would like to, and I've done this myself in my little study here at night. Lay out some different spices. You know, sage, rosemary, cinnamon, allspice, and black pepper, kosher salt, and try them. Just little bits, like wet your finger and just try it. And then that aids me when I describe whiskey, because I'm conveying to you in clear terms. Most of us know what a cinnamon stick tastes like. And if I say there's a lot of cinnamon in this, there's not in Craigenmore, but there's a lot in, say, Alberta Premium's 60% alcohol by volume cask strength release. It's a lot of cinnamon, a ton of cinnamon. You know what I mean? You know, those Valentine little hearts, cinnamon hearts. So use the vocabulary of the food you know, and you're good. Okay. What next? This is totally unscripted. Water. Well, before I go to water, I'm going to go to water. Complexity. Whiskey reviewers and people who taste whiskey all the time will say, this is a very complex dram. And you know, you might be thinking, what are they talking about? Complex dram. How is it complex as opposed to being simple? When you, Jason, say Craigenmore is a complex dram, what are you talking about? This is what I'm talking about. The way the flavors intermingle, it's delicate, it's intricate, it's tightly weaved flavor. It is not simple, it's not just a tongue lashing of cinnamon, which I would submit Alberta Premium cask strength is. Pretty simple stuff, just a lot of cinnamon. A lot of spice, a lot of alcohol. Craigenmore, we got barley, we got wheat, we got honey, we've got wild honey, buttered toast that's blackened. And for the complexity, I find with Craigenmore, just, you know, a little bit of water, buddy, makes all the difference. I'm going to put a little more in. So, water changes the chemistry of the spirit. Changes the nose too. But for now, we're going to try the flavor now. I find a little bit of water brings out very interesting notes in Craigenmore that I would describe as complex. Some spirits, you add water, you over dilute it, it loses its flavor. It's better without water. So, when to have water, when not to have, it's a matter of personal taste. How much water to put in? Just get a kitchen spoon, put in 1/4 teaspoon, then maybe try with 1/2 teaspoon or a whole teaspoon. This one's alcohol by volume is 40%, so you don't want a lot of water. If you have something bottled at 46%, 48%, anything over 46, in my opinion, needs water. I think Knob Creek is at 50% alcohol by volume, and Wild Turkey 101. You can enjoy them without water. They're kind of exceptions. You won't enjoy them long without water, because after a while you won't be enjoying anything. You'll be face down on the carpet, but be careful. So water is something to add to your single malts. What about ice? Everybody wonders about ice. If you like your single malts with ice, I know a guy drinks Macallan 12 with ice. That's an expensive habit. I find if you add ice to whiskey, it within minutes is over diluted and it's not as optimum flavor. I have a sweet spot for Johnny Walker Black Label with a cube of ice in it. Let it melt for about a minute or 45 seconds and then take a sip. It's glorious. 2 minutes later, it's over diluted. So ice, if I'm at a party and I don't really care what the flavor is, I'm just mingling with people to barbecue, it's summertime. Johnny Walker with a bunch of ice or Crown Royal with a bunch of ice, hey, nothing wrong with that. And I find I really enjoy it in the first couple of minutes when the ice is just slowly melting. But once it starts to melt, it's over diluted. But if you like, and I know guys, and I did for quite a while, when I first got into whiskey, I added ice even to single malts. I certainly added it to all my blends because I just liked it that way. Over time I realized that I'm missing a lot of the flavor experience with ice. So that's a personal preference. If a guy or lady, is in my company and they want to throw 2 ice cubes into their Sherry Wood Macallan 12-year-old, hey, that's their choice. I don't turn my nose up at them. One thing about whiskey, march to the beat of your own drum. Much as in life, as in whiskey. Do what's good for you. Okay, we got that out of the way. Let me think. I'll take a sip. Maybe I'll get inspired for some more info. A word about whiskey. Blended Scotch. What's the difference between a blended Scotch and a single malt? Blended Scotch obviously has grain whiskey, meaning other than barley used and is distilled, part of the mash bill to make the whiskey and blend it in with it. I find grain whiskeys other than barley, like wheat, corn, rye, whatever, they impart a bit of a onion-like note or caramelized onion note if they're too young and there's too much of it. So grain whiskeys with single malts combined together for a blended Scotch bulk up the drink, but they, if they're too young and too much, yeah, it becomes very unpleasant. And finally, a little word about age statements. So a few years ago, for quite a few years, the big whiskey producers were moving away from age statements, going to color-coded schemes. This label, this color label. Macallan did it, amber, gold, whatever. And they dropped the age statements. And part of the reason is because they have so much demand and they also profitability. They can make more money if you start bottling whiskey at, say, 10 years or 11 years rather than at 12 years. They're making more money. But I don't even think it's about money. I'm seeing the trend now. They're going back to the age statement because the consumers are going, this is not as good. And then they migrate to something that's better. So we're seeing